Hello everyone. This video is going to go over the AP style guide to possessives and apostrophes. And every time I teach this lesson, all I can hear in my head is the seagulls and Finding Nemo going, mine, mine, mine. That's because possessive means to own something. If I own something, it is mine. If you own something, it is yours. So possessives show who or what possesses the thing. You're going to use an apostrophe in your writing to show possession, but whether you use just an apostrophe or you use an apostrophe S changes depending upon the various rules of possession. Plural nouns not ending in S, you will add an apostrophe S. Women's rights, women is plural, it refers to many women. And then it does not end in S, so you add apostrophe S to make it plural. Plural nouns that end in S, you're only going to add an apostrophe. So girls' toys. So if you have more than one girl who own toys, girls' toys. Churches' rooms. You have multiple churches that have rooms, so churches' rooms. Nouns that are plural in form but singular in meaning, meaning that even though the noun ends in an S, it really is referring to something that is only one thing, such as mathematics. Mathematics is a singular field, but it is plural in form. You will only add an apostrophe when trying to show possession here. When a formal name of a singular entity ends in S, you will just add an apostrophe. So for instance, General Motors is a singular company, so it ends in S, and therefore you will add just the apostrophe to get General Motors' profits. Same for United States, which is a singular country but ends in S, the United States' wealth. Nouns that are the same, both singular and plural, treat the same as plural even if they're used in the singular. So two deers' tracks, while deer can refer to one deer or multiple deer, here we are going to use the same rules that since it does not have an S on the end of its name, that we will add apostrophe S. But if we're looking at one course location, then we would say that ends in S, and therefore it's using the singular form. But because it ends in S, we're going to treat it the same as a plural and just add an apostrophe. Singular nouns that do not end in S, you're just going to add apostrophe S. Danielle's house. Fox's dens. So even if the end of the word makes an S sound, such as ending in C, X, ES, or I'm sorry, not ES, but some of the other S sounds for words, we actually do not change that. So in some style guides, singular nouns that end in S sounds, such as CE, X, and Z, they ask that you make those, you treat them like plurals. However, in AP style, you're going to treat them as singular. So sorry, that was a little confusing, but those singular nouns that end in S sounds like CE, X, and Z treat as singular, as I've done here in the example. Singular common nouns that end in S will also be treated as singular. So hostess's invitation. Even though the word hostess ends in S, it's a singular noun, and so therefore you will add apostrophe S. The Devers' home. Because the Devers is a singular family that we're talking about, that means that you would add apostrophe S to speak about the Devers' home. Singular proper names ending in S, you're only going to use an apostrophe. And this is just a unique rule. but singular proper names that end in S only get an apostrophe, such as Achilles' heel, Dickens's novels, Jesus's life. There are many special expressions to these rules. Words that end in an S sound and are followed by a word that begins with an S will only get an apostrophe. So for appearance's sake, you will not add an apostrophe S, but because the next word next to it is sake, which begins with S. So you don't want to have apostrophe S and then have a word that starts with S. It's about clarity for your reader here. But in the phrase appearances cost, because the second word does not begin with S, then you would add an apostrophe S. Pronouns never have an apostrophe, and if you don't know the possessive pronouns and possessive adjectives for first, second, and third person subjects, you should probably study that. So if the subject is I, and I want it to be a possessive pronoun, it would be mine. The computer is mine. Or it could be my computer if I was treating the possessive as an adjective. One main thing that I always like to point out is it's. This is a commonly mistaken grammatical rule in a lot of our language use. So it's without an apostrophe is the possessive for it. It means it's owned by it. It's with an apostrophe is actually a contraction for the phrase it is. So if you're using an apostrophe with it, then you are meaning it is. So that is a good way to remember that the possessive of the pronoun will never receive an apostrophe, including its. Compound words, you will add an apostrophe or apostrophe S for the word closest to the object possessed following your standard rules. So major generals, which would refer to a single major general, would follow the rules for singular nouns, apostrophe S. But if I was talking about multiple major generals, which would be people who all hold the title of major general, then that would be a plural, and I would just use an apostrophe. Honestly, if you run into this place where you're not sure if it's really clear whether you're talking about a singular or plural noun, go ahead and just rewrite the phrase to avoid that confusion. Joint possession is also important to remember because if you use the possessive form only after the last word, then the ownership will be joint, such as Fred and Sylvia's apartment. By saying Fred and Sylvia's apartment, I'm suggesting that both Fred and Sylvia have a name on the apartment and they both own it together. However, if I use the possessive form after both words, it means that they are individually owned. So Fred's and Sylvia's books. So we're talking about Fred's books and Sylvia's books, and they are not shared books. So if Fred and Sylvia had some books that were in common, I would say Fred and Sylvia's books. But if I'm talking about books that they own individually, it would be Fred's and Sylvia's books. Descriptive phrases, we will not add an apostrophe to a word ending in S when it's used primarily in a descriptive sense, such as a writer's guide or a teacher's college. If you can use for or by with the words, then it's likely descriptive and you won't add an apostrophe. So a guide for writers, a college for teachers, that will give you the best clue whether or not it's a descriptive phrase or a possessive. You will need to add an apostrophe S for plural words that don't end in S. So children, which is a plural word, but that does not end in S, would need to add an apostrophe S that's treated as a singular here because it doesn't end in S. So a children's hospital. Descriptive names use the guidelines given by an organization because a lot of times the organization will have their own distinction. So for instance, Ladies Home Journal uses the possessive plural form of ladies, while National Governors Association does not use any possessive rule at all. So either use the AP Stylebook to refer to those particular organizations, or if they are not featured in the AP Stylebook, you can use whatever that organization calls themselves. Double possessives are those that talk about two different possessions within one phrase. So a friend of John's. And so the word after the word of needs to be alive for this to be allowed. So friend of the college, colleges are not animate objects, they are inanimate. And so therefore we do not do a double possessive here. Words before of must involve only a portion of the animate object's possession. So for instance, if I were saying the friends of John Adams, well, that encapsulates all of John Adams' possessions, all of his friends. And so therefore I would not make that possessive either, but a friend of John's would be possessive. Again, we should probably rewrite this, right? John's friend. Inanimate objects, there's no standard rule about possessives for things that are not alive. In fact, we have a lot of various phrases that treat inanimate objects, things that are not alive, as possessives. But, you know, when you really think about it, can an inanimate object really own something? Maybe up for interpretation. So try to avoid excessive personalization of these objects, but know that it is okay to have an inanimate object be possessive. Just think about whether or not that really has the true meaning that you're wanting to communicate. So now that you understand a little bit more about possessives, make sure you do your AP homework by Friday, September 18th by midnight. And then you will read chapter 9 for Friday's module. This is going to be about the body of a news story. But for Friday, we're only going to be talking about the inverted pyramid style, which is the first 9 pages of that chapter. So don't feel like you have to read the entire chapter. It is a bit longer than some of our others. So just read pages 180 through 189.